It's not often that there'll be a situation where an internet content creator gets accused of doing some heinous, deplorable, degenerate, sketchy garbage, and you're caught off guard by it. Most of the time, the stories play out with people you expect to be the likely suspect, like Logan Paul. You know, when you hear that he's scamming his audience with CryptoZoo and not repaying them, you're like, you know what? That sounds about par for the course. That sounds about right. Of course, there are those rare times where it really comes out of nowhere, you know, but it's never going to be something super shocking like Mr. Rogers just got revived from the dead and now he's beating children at a local elementary school or anything. But today, that's kind of how it feels because a YouTuber that I've really respected for a long time was just accused of some pretty awful things in regards to how they handled their charity organization that they've done fundraising for the last 9 years. And there's a lot of evidence about this that has been put out there to the public now. So the situation is a YouTuber named The Completionist, who's been around for a very long time, whose content I am very familiar with, has just been put in the center of a huge controversy after an investigation was conducted by two other YouTubers whom I have a lot of love and respect for, Mudahar, Some Ordinary Gamers, and Carl Jobst. The two of them decided to team up like a beautiful buddy cop movie, forming the goddamn Avengers here, and they decided to dig into the financial reports that are publicly available for a charity that the Completionist owns called the Open Hand Foundation. It was started when his mother tragically passed away from dementia, and for the last 9 years has been gathering money to give to causes that will help in the battle against dementia. But what Carl and Muda found is that over the course of the last 9 years since it's existed, they haven't donated a single penny from any of their fundraising to any cause whatsoever. All of that money is still, well, most of that money is still sitting in the bank account for that charity. And despite this, over the last 9 years, they continue to raise money while telling the audience that's giving them the money that it's all being donated and it's being helped to fight against dementia. Even though the reality is none of that money has been sent anywhere. It is still in that account. Aside from some operating expenses that they've incurred, which they don't specify anything on, which is extremely fishy. And there's just so many things about this that have raised the alarm for many people internally here who have reviewed everything that Mudahar and Carl have presented and taken elsewhere. It's just there's a ton of red flags. And they even do talk to the Completionist directly during these videos. They interviewed him, and he also recognizes the problem. He admits to the problem. He can see how bad it all is, though I will say that his explanations for why it's in the state that it's in and what's happening here with this situation aren't very good. I don't think he does a great job of defending this in any way that makes any real sense. So the whole thing is extremely unfortunate. Now, he hasn't made a full official public statement yet aside from these interviews, but it's not looking very good. There's really not a whole lot of wiggle room for this just to be classified as like, you know, digging up dirt and drama on nothing, making a mountain out of a molehill. No, this is like pretty watertight evidence that they presented, and even the person at like the helm of it, the Completionist, recognizes that, yeah, it's a huge problem, it's bad. So I'll boil this down for a lot of people that may have just seen like a bit of what's going on Twitter. So Mudahar and Carl, they worked together to investigate a YouTuber named The Completionist and his charity foundation. It's called the Open Hand Foundation. And basically, since it's a charity foundation, their records are public. So they can see what money comes in and what money goes out, like to charitable causes. Basically, they're a middleman. They take in donations, the charity that is, and it's all under the pretense that it's going to be donated to a benefactor that's going to fight against dementia, like come up with treatments, maybe a cure, anything to combat dementia. Mudahar and Carl decided to dig through their financials because, again, all of that's public. And what they found is since 2014, they haven't donated a single penny to any causes, anything at all. All of that money, it's like $600,000 and some change, is still just sitting in their account. Despite the Completionist doing these charity fundraisers yearly and telling people where, you know, like the money's going here and there and it's being used to help people, this and that. Meanwhile, it has just been sitting in an account. And They interviewed him, and he also recognized, like, this is a problem. And there was a couple things he said that really didn't sit right with me, where he kind of made it seem like his biggest concern was his public image as a result of all of this. So he'd be like, maybe maybe if I have to just take the L here, like, this isn't a take the L situation. If you've been misleading people with a charity's purpose and what it's been doing for all of these years, that's like a very big deal. Very, very big deal. It's not just like a, frivolous internet drama. So that's kind of the situation in a nutshell. He hasn't come forward with like a full statement on his own outside of the interview they did where he does own up to all of it, though he says it's not on purpose. He's just made a mistake. He was under the assumption that the money was being donated. Turns out it hasn't been, so it's just been sitting stagnant, collecting dust and cobwebs in the bank account for the charity foundation. And there was a lot of other really weird stuff, and I won't get into the weeds. I highly recommend watching either Mudahar's video or Carl's video on it where they go over it. But there are a lot of other weird things in there, such as the way that they report what money gets spent on, like, operational costs. There was just a lot of red flags. But the biggest thing is he continues to raise money for this charity. Everyone who donates believes that money is going towards the cause that he is promoting, like, hey, this money is being used to combat dementia, find treatments, this and that. That's where we're sending the money. It's not. It's just sitting in a bank account. So that's the big problem. It's just lying to the audience. Now, from everything they've reported, Mudahar and Carl haven't said that he's pocketing the money or anything like that. I know Dexerto ran a dog shit article claiming that that's what Mudahar and Carl were saying. They're not. They are not making the claim that the completionist or anyone on his team is taking that money for themselves. It's just since, again, all of the records are public, you can see that the money is still just in that account. It is still just sitting there for 9 fucking years. And it's because they can't find the right benefactor, which is a really weird excuse. That doesn't make a lot of sense at all. Didn't they have like 100K operating expenses? Something like that, which again, they don't report what the actual operating expenses were, like specifically, which makes them very vulnerable to an audit, which is something they talk about. It's just all very fishy. It's very poorly ran. Poorly ran is being extremely generous. There are so many things in here that don't make a lot of sense at all. I want to show you a clip from Carl's video, actually a couple clips from Carl's video.
Their website clearly states they support the UCSF, and they have a quote from David Kessler, the Dean of the UCSF School of Medicine, thanking them for their gift. But the interesting thing about David Kessler is that he was fired as the Dean of the UCSF School of Medicine in 2007, 7 years before OpenHand was even officially registered.
That's an extreme eyebrow raiser right there. To any detective worth their salt, they'd puff on their pipe, let out a big puff of smoke and say, "Baloney, what's happening?" and dig deeper, which is exactly what Carl and Mudahar did. Carl reached out to the organization to ask them why they haven't given any money over the last 10 or so years.
Which was written by Jacques Khalil, Gerard's brother. They claimed that before their official registration as a foundation, they donated body parts for research. A strange claim that I don't believe can be true of a charity. That's likely referring to a private and personal matter within their family and would have nothing to do with OpenHand. They claim they made financial contributions to an institution that made insufficient progress. Essentially, OpenHand is claiming that because they made donations before they were registered in 2014, which we cannot confirm because it wasn't public at the time, this means that it is acceptable to not pass along any of the money the public has given them until they find someone they deem worthy.
That's a lot to take in, so I understand if you need a moment to catch your breath and let all the juices marinate here. It's a very upsetting topic, with charitable causes turning out to be less than stellar, we'll say. It's always a very fucked up situation, but basically what is being claimed here from the completionist brother is that in the past, before OpenHand was registered, they donated body parts to the UCSF, and that's where that quote comes from. But like Carl mentions, that has nothing to do with OpenHand, so why would you be using that quote on OpenHand's website? It's very misleading to people. If I'm someone that's donating to OpenHand Foundation, and I'm seeing that quote, I'm assuming that this means the contributions are going to them. And here's them saying, thanks for all the support. But that's just not the case here at all. The money's not going anywhere, and that quote does not apply to donations that they're receiving from Open Hand. And going a bit further, the completionist brother is saying that they did give money in the past before they were registered, which Carl says they can't confirm since it wasn't public. But he's saying they gave money in the past, they didn't like the progress, they thought it was insufficient, so now they're just waiting for the perfect partner, the perfect benefactor to give the money to now. And it's been 9 years and they still haven't found it. So it's just incompetence, not malice. It's more than incompetence, though. It'd be like full-blown negligence to the point where it's like borderline illegal. I don't even know it'd be borderline. I think it would be just like straight up illegal if they get audited and they find all of these like big red flags. You can't just have a charitable organization make all of these claims about where the money's going. On their website, they even list like a university that they say that they're one of like the historic funders of or something to that effect, even though they haven't donated any money to any of those causes or anything in general. Like it's all very, very bad sounding. I'm very curious to see what the completionist will say about it outside of the interview he did here. I would really like to hear more from him on exactly what the fuck is going on and why it's in that place. And even more so, I'd love to hear from the completionist on why he continues to do these fundraising events and make the claims that the money going here and there and over there, it's going there, and blah, even though the money's going nowhere. Why does he continue to mislead the audience into giving money under the belief that it's being sent to these different places when it's not?
If they've been looking for a beneficiary since 2014, why has Gerard been claiming they support organizations across the world, including the UCSF and the Alzheimer's Association?
We are raising money for dementia research in honor of my late mom, trying to help folks who've been impacted by dementia, working with organizations like USF, FTD Association of America, Alzheimer's Association of America, and so many more.
Why is he claiming the money is actually given to people who know how to use it?
And all that money goes to dementia research. We don't touch any of it. We just work with the people who do need the money, and we help them do their thing.
In this case, the negligence isn't hurting anyone. When I read things like that, like I just have to sit there and process it for a second. It takes a while to register just how you could actually believe that, like legitimately, or if you're just kidding. They've collected over $600,000 in donations from their community. Normal people like you, like everyone in chat, donating under the idea, the belief, because they're being told that that money is being used to help against the battle, help in the battle against dementia. And it's not. It's just sitting in a bank account right now. So everyone who has donated money lost money, and it didn't go to the cause they thought it would. That they thought it would. That was the whole reason they donated the money, to go towards that cause, which it hasn't. It's been sitting there for 9 years. You see the British airline pilot that did cocaine off of a stripper before flight. That was probably the fastest flight in recorded aviation history. Those passengers got to their destination lickety-split. Just a very peculiar situation here, Jordan. Again, if you want, I just went over like the very basic. If you want to get into the weeds of it and really understand the situation, watch Mudahar's video or Carl's video covering this. They both go in depth, obviously, on all of it and talk about everything and exactly the implications and what's going on. And then I'm assuming the completionist will probably make some kind of public statement very soon because it is such a huge deal. And I'm very curious what exactly he's going to talk about. Because he was interviewed here, again. He did say his piece. It wasn't a very good piece, but I am curious where it goes from here. Again, I highly encourage all of you to watch Mudahar and Carl's video covering this subject for more information. There's just one other thing I want to briefly touch on here. For some reason, Muda and Carl were asked for recommendations on where they thought the money should go, and during the interview with the completionist Gerard, he was saying like, "I'll donate the money today. You just tell me where it should go." And that's so fucking weird. It's not their job to tell you where that money should go. It's your organization, and you have said where the money's supposed to be going and just haven't sent it there. So just to kind of repeat what Mudahar said, just send the money where you said it was going, like this whole time. It's that simple. They still have most of the funds, minus the 9 years or so of operational expenses they've incurred. So since that money is still just sitting there collecting cobwebs, it hasn't been like fucking thrown into, blackjack tables at the Hard Rock Casino or anything. It's still present. It hasn't just fucking poofed out of thin air and vanished. They can still donate that money to the causes they've said it's going to. Now, of course, they should absolutely do that, but the question will always remain now, are they doing that because of this investigation that's put a lot of public pressure on them to do so? Or were they always going to do this at some point and this was just the final push they needed to finally get there? I'm not doing a good job of explaining the conundrum, but basically there's always going to be this doubt in the back of everyone's mind about their intentions regardless of what happens going forward. Was this charity from the very get-go designed to be a charitable fraud situation where they collect money from the audience, hold on to it for a really long time, and maybe gradually tap into it to use for their own expenses? Or maybe at some point they just take it all out for themselves and pocket it? Who knows now, because it's been 9 years and they still haven't donated a single dollar of what they've gathered. And I do think they are going to donate it now, but would they have if Mudahar and Carl didn't investigate this? Would they have ever donated this money if the investigation didn't happen? Who knows? Who's to say? Which is why it's always going to be this doubt in the back of people's mind on what actually was their goal with the foundation, if not to donate the money to the causes they said they were. This is super fucked up. I am extremely curious to see what the completionist is going to say about this going forward publicly. I'd really like to hear from his side a bit more on what exactly is going on. But it certainly doesn't look good, and this is a subject that really hits close to home for me. Many of you might remember for a long time I would donate all of the money I made on YouTube to various charities. Over time I realized a lot of the organizations that I was putting money into were not exactly the best and engaged in a lot of sketchy practices, and a lot of the money didn't go where they claimed it would. So charitable fraud is always something that I'm pretty passionate about. It's a really disgusting idea to take advantage of people's generosity and people's will to fight against something for the betterment of the people they care about, the rest of the world. Just taking advantage of people and exploiting their generosity is such a foul concept. And I really hope that's not what the goal of this organization was. I'm hoping this actually is just a case of them being not exactly prepared to run an organization with money of this caliber and just didn't know what to do with it or how best it could be used. I don't really know. There's not a whole lot of ways of looking at it positively, but yeah, I just had to go over this situation a bit because it's a pretty upsetting one. That's really it. So yeah.